After what felt like a lifetime, the floor stopped moving. My guts fizzed rather than threatened to detonate. I had no idea how long I'd been in the cubicle, but for a while it felt like the inside of those melamine walls would be the last thing I ever saw. I had died and come back to life. Walking out to the sinks, my legs felt hollow. What the fuck just happened? I burst into tears, running the water as hot as it would go over my hands. Looking in the mirror at my face, I looked the same. My clothes, hair and shoes all looked the same, but how? Glancing at the cubicle through its open door, I just saw a manky school toilet. How did it become the eye of a storm just moments ago? I was shaking, but started to feel myself again. I, the person who'd walked into that science lab, laughing at Charlotte O'Neill's impressions of our weird art teacher, was back, from wherever I'd been, but some kind of switch had been flicked. I went and sat at my bench again, convinced everyone could see whatever had just happened all over my face. A few girls looked up from their Bunsen burners, but people skived all the time, and a long absence mid-lesson was nothing new. I'd got away with it. Maybe I wasn't in there as long as I thought. My concentration was hazy for the rest of the lesson, though, and when it came to going home, I still felt strange and couldn't stop thinking about the experience, as I referred to it in my head. I walked past the skate ramp, where I spent most of my evening sat with others reading The Face and desperately trying to like the taste of beer and fags, and thought, Jesus, it would be awful if that weird thing happened here in front of everyone. What if I couldn't stop it happening so quickly? What if everyone saw me? Those two words, what if, would come to define the next 15 years of my life. In the future, those two syllables would haul me out of lectures, off tube trains and away from dates. They'd boot me out of nightclubs and cut conversations short at parties. They'd paralyse me in restaurants, pin me in bed, shred my social life and build a village of secrets in my mind until such a trench had been worn in my psyche that it would give up, exhausted, twice. Of course, I didn't know any of that then. It was a hot walk home, the kind of heat that scorches the grass yellow and makes the air smell like hazelnuts. Running my hands through the pampas grass that kissed the corners of the swimming pool behind my house. I had no idea that what I'd experienced was a panic attack. Things would change. Jesus Christ, how they'd change. But I knew as much about what panic attack meant then as I did about the structural formula of a carbon atom. Whatever it was that had happened to me earlier that day tore a hot gash in my mind. There was no going back. I struggled to eat dinner, remembering the nausea. In my top bunk that night, I fell asleep imagining my evenings at the ramp and how, if I ever felt that ill again, I'd have to get away so no one could see. What if it happened out of nowhere again somewhere else? What if I couldn't be alone? What if I died next time? What if? 2 litres of pus. My first panic attack came shortly after my return to school, after spending months at home recovering from a spectacular ruptured appendix. It was a strange experience and one that, after a certain point, I have sketchy memories of. Over a few days of increasing pain and digestive symptoms that both my mum and I had attributed to a nasty period, my appendix became infected, exploded, and turned a good few inches of my bowel gangrenous. The surgeons had to take all the poison bits out, along with the 2 litres of pus that had filled my abdominal cavity. That's the same as a giant bottle of Coca-Cola, if you want perspective. When my mum took me into A&E, holding over 5 feet of teenager in her arms like a pike, my body was raging with peritonitis, septicemia, and a body temperature that broke the measuring equipment. I remember very little, other than a portly nurse saying, "Yep, you're cooking nicely," but was told later that my eyes had been rolling in my head, that I had been fitting and, basically, snuffing it fast. The last thing I remember is my belly being the size of a house and having contraction-like waves of pain that made me flail wildly towards anyone that was near the bed in an appeal to make it stop. After several hours of overnight surgery, I came round on the ward covered in wires and big splashes of iodine solution, and with a huge drain pipe thing full of coral-coloured liquid hanging out of my right-hand side. Mum was asleep on a chair beside me with her hand on my shin.